I shaved just for this occasion.
I have not shaved.
We noticed. Yeah, but I'm not wearing pants.
Oh. Oh, for the love of God, please don't do that.
That's on the back. Yeah, it's on the back. It's on the.
I just realized that this spins. I'm just Will's about to throw his drink through the screen. I didn't know that this thing will spin around and it slides up and down. It's cool. What's happening, Lucas? Welcome.
What's up, guys?
Good to see everybody. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started on this one. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Well, I guess staying in. But we're going to do, this one's a little bit different than what we've done in the last couple episodes. This is literally a question and answer session here. So anything that you've ever wanted to ask, you have Will Smith over there. But you can't see his face because he's got the sunlight to his back, so you can't see him at all. Yep, there he's drinking.
Oh, okay. That is Will. All I saw was some squirrels back there in the tree. Yeah,
that's Will. You got Will. For those of you that don't know Will, he's the owner of Will Smith Aviation. What's that? CFI, MEI, ATP, all that stuff. 6,000 hours. John Waltz with the hat up there. John Waltz, an airline pilot as well. He got all the initials as well, 15,000 hours. And then our man over there behind the lights there is Ron Hall. Once again, all the initials and about 30,000 hours plus of flight time. So those are your 3 CFIs for this session. Feel free. Who wants to go ahead and start first? Who's got a question? This will not work if you guys don't have any questions. Just a heads up. We'll put it out there, or if not, we'll just be staring at each other. Who wants to go first? Raise your hand.
Kyle, I know you want to ask me a question.
Kyle, go ahead.
I might have to relocate because it's so loud over here. Hold on. I'm going to relocate.
Okay. Kyle's relocating. Ken. Oh, you got a question? You're muted, by the way, just a heads up. All right, so here's what we'll do. I'm going to start this off real quick. Oh, Kyle just relocated himself totally off the call. I'm going to start this off for Adrian. Everybody knows Adrian Washington, who's part of the group. He is not able to make it, but he went in and submitted a question right here. So he wants to, his question is about cross-country route planning. So who's going to want to take this one? Will, John, Ron.
Are we talking about VFR or IFR?
Okay, so Will's going to take it. Cross-country route planning. It's going to be VFR. He wants to know what kind of landmarks as checkpoints, what altitude to fly and why, and is it easier going around Tampa's class Bravo than trying to get clearance to go through it? Thank you very much.
All right. Well, since I haven't taught a private pilot in years, I'm going to shoot from the hip on this one. John and Ron, feel free to jump in. Since he's looking at like points on cross, I'm going to say this is a VFR cross-country plan. There's usually points on the map for checking. Whether it's like, I know one in the Tampa area is up near Brooksville, the airport. There's a visual checkpoint. Your altitudes, well, VFR, you're going to, of course, 500 depending on which direction you're going into. whether it's northeast or southwest or just directly cardinal east or west. So that'll give you your even or your odd. What else do you have in there about going through?
Yeah, is it easier to just fly around Class Bravo, Tampa's Class Bravo, and he's specifically talking about Tampa, or trying to get clearance to go through it?
Well, if you're a student pilot, here's a question for the group. Are you allowed to fly through Bravo Airspace?
Ooh, I know.
Yes, Bond.
As a student pilot?
Wait a minute, I know this one.
Yeah. Let Stacy answer.
I think if your instructor signed you off. If you have a instructor sign you off.
And you've done what, practicing in Bravo Airspace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think that's wrong?
An endorsement?
Yes.
Ron, what do you
Probably
think?
the only thing I remember from my training.
What I think is I don't remember. That's why I'm Googling it as we speak. I'm kind of inclined to think that a student pilot can't fly Class Bravo, but I'm going back to when it was a TSA, so I don't remember for sure. Maybe they can if they have an endorsement now. I'm just going to check.
So I think as a student pilot, you need to have an endorsement from a CFI before you can go. Like, for example, if your airport is in a Class B airspace, for example, Phoenix International, it has a flight school there on the airport, and that lies underneath the Class B airspace. So for you to legally operate, you have to have an endorsement from the CFI. That's how to operate.
And if you're just doing a cross
John's
country,
exactly correct. That's FAR 6195. That's that endorsement.
do it. What I have done with my students in the Tampa Bay area is there is a VFR transition corridor across Bravo. So if you're, say, at Vandenberg and you want to get over to
Vandenberg,
West Coast, you do the east-west transition. It used to be 9 and 2/7, but due to the Earth tectonics and the runways change. What is it? I think it's 10 years. Their numbers change. So now it's 8 and 2/9, I believe, or 2/8 and 10. I'm sorry, it's 2/8 and 10, which is still the east-west transition. So you can go through there as quicker, or you can fly underneath the Bravo and go north or you can go south. If you were to go south here and want to go over there to where, like, Sarasota, you're going to stay under 1,200 feet. I always suggest to new students, just because it's a 1,200 foot is your shelf, don't fly at 1,200 feet. Fly at 1,000 feet. Give yourself a couple hundred feet cushion, so if something happens like turbulence or you look down to the floor to pick up your pin, you're not busting Bravo Airspace, because that is a pilot deviation, and you will get in trouble for that. So it's always good to give yourself about 200 feet underneath the Bravo. So depending on, but it's totally up to you. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. Some people are really scared when they're beginning to talk on the radio, especially with Bravo controllers, because things happen a lot. You're flying over the east-west corridor, and this is over Tampa International Airport, so you got some big jets coming in and out of there. So you got to really be on your game. So from an inexperienced pilot, I would recommend, until you get enough experience talking to ATC, flying with your instructor in the Bravo or through the Bravo, I would recommend you stay outside of the Bravo and just practice and kind of on COM2 monitor ATC and listen to them and see, they can get used to how busy the airspace is and be expected when you decide to go through the Bravo.
I think a part of his question is, as let's say a 50-hour private pilot, is it easier or harder? Let's say he's leaving Tampa exec, and is it easier or harder for him to either just fly all the way around, or is it, how hard is it for him to get clearance to go through Bravo airspace?
Depends on how busy it is and when he's going. If they're real busy and you're trying to get clearance, you still have to hold outside the Bravo. So you might be sitting there orbiting. And I've done that before, just trying to get a plane for maintenance, like a 414 from one side of the Tampa to the other. Not able to fly on that far flight, but went up, held. They finally gave me a squawk code transition. It flew over there. So that's all depending on how big. Some of them, they might just say remain clear of class Bravo. So you don't have another choice. You just, unless you want to sit there and hold and wait. It's not that hard to stay below the 1,200-foot shelf and just skirt across the bay. You're still remaining, 1,000 foot above the highest obstacle, even though you're on the 1,200 feet, because while you're over the bay, there's not much down there except ships and boats. So that might be easier. But at a early part in the morning when it's not busy, you might just click on in 19.9 and they're like, sure, give you a squawk code and vector you right through there. Have you do the east-west transition. So that's what all be determined on the easiest, whether it's easy or not, is when you're doing it, how busy the Bravo is at the time.
Didn't
I think
when we had the fly-in down in St. Pete, I didn't get to go, but I think Eric went down and he had mentioned that he was trying to get access to the Bravo, and they wouldn't respond to him or wouldn't do something, so he just had to stay below all the way over to St. Pete.
Yeah, and we've done that where we leave Tampa exec, and Stacy, you probably done it as well, going over to Ron's place over at Albert Whitted, and sometimes you get clearance on the way there, and a lot of times on the way back, it's just easier to stay at 1,000 feet until we get to the other side of the bay. And when we leave out of Albert Whitted,
it's a pretty cool view too.
What's that?
It's a pretty cool view as well. At 1,000 feet skirting across the bay.
Yeah, that's what I found too, flying out of Albert Whitted. I'll fly over to Lakeland or something, or maybe I'll get flight following coming back from Lakeland, get clearance in the Class B. Half the time I end up almost all the way to Sarasota before they allow me to turn and come back. So I prefer just stay out of Class B personally.
He does that when he's flying for the airlines. He tries to stay out of Class Bravo too. So
well, there you go. There's another question. Who do you think the #1 violator is of Class B airspace?
I have to say the commercial.
Yeah. John is correct. It's airline pilots. Airline pilots are the #1 violator of Class B airspace, because just like a general aviation pilot has to have a clearance to enter Class B airspace, we have to remain in Class B airspace all the time if there's Class B airspace at the airport we're serving. So typically what happens is we get a visual approach. So on that visual approach, it's just like you, if you're flying visually to the airport, you just ascend to altitude and you feel comfortable, head to the airport. We do exactly the same thing. What happens is, like, you're familiar with the Class B airspace here around Albert Whitted, like at 1,200 feet, we may go to 1,000 feet because we're safe out there over the water, but we're not in Class B airspace. And so airline pilots and airliners are the #1 violators of Class B airspace. Typically violations aren't given, but they keep records and track of it. So.
Hey Juan, can you give me screen share authority, please?
What's that?
Yeah, you can enter Class Bravo. Hold on.
Okay. So guys, in my opinion, I think we're talking about cross-country flight planning, and FAR 91-103, which is kind of a hidden FAR, but it's a requirement that it doesn't matter if you're going to shoot or you're going to go and on a cross-country flight plan. 91-103, which I'll share right now, is every PIC needs to have all of this required before you hop in an airplane. So you need to know all of this before you hop in, and I'll share it right now. You guys see my screen?
Yep.
So FAR 91-103, each PIC before each flight must be familiar with all of these items, even if you're going to go and shoot touch and go. So you need to know the weather, your fuel, any known traffic delays, runway lengths, everything. Because if you get ramp checked by a Fed, they're going to ask you 91-103, do you have weight and balance? Do you know the runway length? Do you know your takeoff performance? So you must know everything in 91-103 before you hop in an aircraft, just even going on touch and go. So in my opinion, this goes from any flight and or cross-country flight planning. So
correct. And another thing that most common people forget to bring with them is their weight and balance. They'll calculate it at home, but do you have it on you in the aircraft?
Behind the seat.
If you got ramp check, would you be able to pull it out and say, yep, this is where I did my weight and balance. This is where we're with the CG. This is my max gross weight. This is how much fuel I'm burning. This is, so it's, and a lot of people, they'll do it, but they won't bring it with them.
Right. So like I said, even though you're just going for touch and goes, if you get a ramp check, 91103 will cover you. So I'm not familiar with ForeFlight. I'm kind of, old school on that, but I believe all that stuff when you do a flight plan should cover all that. But again, legally, before you hop in an aircraft, you got to know 91103. Again, this is Part 91 general aviation stuff.
And then since you're talking about weight and balance, now, as an example, if I go fly my airplane, there's like 2 of us, we're going to go fly. Do I do a weight and balance calculation? No, I don't. I don't have to. I can meet that requirement by knowing, because I've done that before with 2 persons and this amount of fuel. With the stuff I've got, a couple of quarts of oil in the back, I know I'm within weight and balance. And I've been ramp checked several times. It doesn't happen very often, but I've been ramp checked a few times. And if the FAA asks us, have you done your weight and balance? I said, well, yes, I have. I'm familiar with this configuration. I'm certain I'm within limits. Do you want to check and I'll show you? And the answer would be no, because they know you're within limits too. So if you know you're within limits, you just have to be sure, according to that regulation, that you have done it in some form or fashion, that you're within limits. Nice. And the same thing with the weather. You can, I like to start with the general and work to the specific. If I get up, I'm watching the Today Show or whatever television on TV, I say it's clear skies, calm winds in Tampa Bay. I want to go do some touching to goes. I've just done my weather for the day because it's clear sky and no wind. I mean, really, that's all you need to know. And does that meet the qualification for that regulation? I think so. You can go check the TAFs and the METARs and whatever, but it should indicate about the same thing.
And that's fair, Ron. I think it's also more of a CYA liability. So, technically for 91103, you have to go and get some sort of weather briefing. If you go out there in your 172 and ball it up in the weeds, because it's a crosswind day, someone could say, well, did you check the weather? So I think, but I think ForeFlight does that. It puts a timestamp on it.
It puts that stuff out there.
Right.
I've dealt with the FAA quite a bit. I've never had them get that specific with, even on a ramp check. They kind of get to the point where does this guy, if I ask him another question, is he going to have the right answer, yes or no?
Right.
And then they kind of.
I think I'm just a little nerd, apparently.
So do you think if I'm going out to Zephyr Hills tomorrow morning, I'm not, because it's not going to be good weather, but let's say it's supposed to be good weather. I went out to do touch and goes there at Zephyr Hills. And it's just me in the plane. I know with full fuel and just me, I'm real clear on weight balance. I'm in no matter what. And I know what the weather is because, I listen to the weather before I take off to know the wind direction, the altimeter, all of that. I wouldn't have to do any more than that, would I?
In my interpretation, when I sign off my students, I make them go and get a weather briefing. When as a private pilot going up, per 91103, you are supposed to get a weather briefing every time you fly. Again, that's just the way that I interpret 911.
And I agree 100%. You should have a weather briefing, but the question is what will qualify as getting a weather briefing? Where can you get that? Where's your information source? I like ForeFlight. That's the greatest thing since canned beer that I've found. If you can ForeFlight, it's really cool with all the information it gives you. But there's lots of places you can get that weather. Let's say you got your weather briefing and it says it's supposed to be clear skies, Cav okay, the wind's calm. So you go out to the airport, you turn up your AWAS, and then all of a sudden you hear, okay, winds 320 at 27, gusts 32, thunderstorm. So what do? You got your weather briefing. The weather briefing says, well, it's okay to go. So you know as well as I do that you're not going to go with that type of condition. So as things change, you have to adjust accordingly. So you may get your AWAS. AWAS may not have it yet, but you may look out there to the east or southeast and see this big line of weather that's moving your direction and say, you know what? this isn't a good time to this isn't a good time to go right now. I don't feel comfortable with this. Constantly evaluating.
So, and that's fair. So I'll ask the group this question here. So from a legality standpoint, if I go, you know, like if I'm going to rent a 172 and I'm going to take 4 of my best friends flying, and I know for a fact that I am going to be overweight, I am going to be, you know, I'm taking off from Plant City, and I know I'm just going to, you know, on paper, I'm not going to go and, or I'm sorry, like, let me rephrase, my takeoff distance is longer than what's in the book. Am I legally, can I go under Part 91? Can I take off? I mean, like I'm overweight, you know, but, you know, hey, it's Part 91. Can I legally take off? Can I do anything like that? Bueller? I like that.
What time you going? I'm calling my buddy at the FAA right now. He's going to
Exactly. The answer is no.
You guys don't know that Steve down there is with the FAA, so see, he's just patiently listening over there.
Oh, is that right? Well, Steve's going to be answering some of these questions then. Are you with the FAA, Steve?
No, I was kidding.
Oh, well, I mean, that'd be great. That'd be great if we had somebody that was. I mean, that'd be super cool.
Unless he turns around and says it. I was just making a joke, but
No.
So I always tell my students, Part 61 is how you get your license. Part 91 is how you lose your license. So are written in blood. And just like John was saying, you can't take off the aircraft overweight, because what does that mean? It's too heavy. Is it going to fly? Probably not. It's one of those things that I've seen happen to people where they'll load the airplane up, rotate, find out that they're not going to make the clear the tree line, and put it straight into the ground and kill everybody on board. This has happened in the Bahamas. This has happened here in Tampa. So I see these things happen, and it's amazing to me why people just they want to ignore the regulations, and they don't get it that Part 91 was written in blood. Somebody died to get that written in there. And sometimes you got to let them know that. And from my profession as a corporate pilot, I've sometimes told the people when they've insisted that we fly, and I say, no, we're going to delay the flight, or no, we have to cancel flight, I ask them a simple question. Are you ready to die today? And that generally shuts them up, because the reason behind it is we can't do this. But you know, the corporate people are a little bit harder, because like, I own the plane, it's my plane, you're going to do what I tell you to do. I simply tell them, you can find another pilot to fly, or are you ready to die today? So just keep in mind, don't push the plane to the maximum limits just because you want to look cool, or you want to get to the keys, or you want to go on your fishing trip. There's been plenty of instances around Tampa. The most recent one that I can remember, I don't know if it was last Christmas or Christmas before, the attorney out of Bartow that took off in 0-0 conditions and killed himself and his whole entire family trying to get to Key West at 5 a.m. You know, it was foolish of him to do that. And so sometimes I like to bring up scary situations to not to scare people, but you need to fear aviation, because when you stop fearing it is when you start making mistakes, and it'll come back. The NTSB reports on planes.
Will just brought up a real good point. Do you ever watch, there's a YouTube, I think it's put up by the AOPA Safety Foundation. I think it's called, let's see here, I'm going to see if I can find it. It's like always about an accident. It's been investigated or has been investigated, and gives you all the problems. The best way to learn is from somebody else's mistakes instead of making them yourself. It's AOPA Safety Foundation. You can look that up on YouTube. There's like a gajillion videos, and I still watch them all the time, because you can pick up something there that you haven't thought of before. Even about flying in the Class Bravo Airspace. I just watched one in Phoenix. This guy picked up, I think it was a Turbo Commander. He was picking it up in Phoenix. He was trying to stay out of Class Bravo because he didn't call him. He got to the point that it was, he had to have such a big climb rate, he couldn't clear the mountains, and ended up smacking into Camelback or something out there and killed everybody on board, just because he was trying to stay out of Class Bravo Airspace. So.
Real quick, we got Spencer that just joined us. So Hey, Spencer, once again, you missed the beginning, but we're just doing a question and answer. So at some point, if you have a question, please go ahead and chime on in, and John, Will, or Ron will answer your CFI question. All right.
So I got something. I'm working on my commercial right now, and my flight school, in regards to weight and balance, they actually have a weight and balance sheet, and on the back of it, you do like a risk assessment, and they evaluate, and the CFI has to evaluate it, see if you're doing you're checking the boxes, you know, weather, winds, you know, your density, altitude, you know, all that stuff, your weight and balance. So my flight school won't even give you the can or the keys to the plane until you actually complete that portion.
Right. I think that's correct, Kyle, because for me, I did my training at Riddle down in Arizona, and we had the same thing. Every flight we had to go and calculate weight and balance, take exactly what you had, and that satisfies 91-103. So, you know, like I said, I think every flight, whether it's a cross-country flight plan or whether it's a local, you know, mission in the pattern, you know, all those need to be, you know, satisfied with that. So again, that's just Part 91 general operating rules. So you are correct, Kyle.
I've got a question. So this happened to me on my cross country, and then it happened, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I went out and did a mini cross country from Zephyr Hills over to Brooksville, down to Lakeland, and back to Zephyr. When I was going to Gainesville, and I was going in, doing a full stop, taxiing back, and then taking back off to complete my cross country. As I was approaching the airport, they said, okay, report a 3 mile right base for runway 7. Okay. So my question was, and I asked this on Facebook as well, and I got multiple different answers. Are we to report to the tower when we're 3 miles from the airport and we're on right base, or we're on base? Or is it like we're 3 miles, we'll have like a 3 mile final, we're on base and we'll be turning final, and we'll have a 3 mile final?
That's probably most likely going into a Delta airport.
Right.
They're asking to report that. So, and most Delta towers don't have radar. Some of them do, but most of them don't. So they're looking to be able to visually see you. So when they ask you a 3 mile right base, you're actually going to be 3 miles from the airport on your right base.
Okay.
So you just tell them, hey, I'm 3 mile right base.
Okay.
So
Say midfield. You know, sometimes you just say 3 miles from the airport. But
that is correct. So it's distance from the field, and not the perpendicular point what you were talking about. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Because it's kind of hard for me, I mean, being a new pilot, and I'm going into, say, Gainesville, to know exactly where the end of the airport, where the end of the runway 7 is, and where my base is going to be when I'm maybe, well, I guess 3 miles out. I have a pretty good view of the runways, and I can tell, being at least at pattern altitude or a little bit higher. But I just kind of thought that was odd, and it kind of threw me off. I wasn't expecting that. And then I heard it again when I was flying into Lakeland the other day. He told me, because 927 was closed, and to report or to a 3 mile left base for runway 5. And so I just assumed that it was 3 miles from the airport. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah, good question, Kent. And just put yourself in the controller's shoes. If you're trying to handle traffic, you're doing it visually. You just kind of want to know when this guy's going to get close, where it sequence you in there with the traffic he has. Will was exactly right. So was John. It's kind of a subjective question. It's just like, when can he get a visual on you to tell you what to do to sequence you up with everybody else? I think that was a good answer.
And I think the lateral boundary, correct me if I'm wrong, of Class D is what, 4 nautical miles or 5 nautical miles from the center?
I think it's 5.
5. So
It could go down to 4, but I think for Gainesville and Lakeland, I think they're both 5.
yeah, so I don't think they would make, so it's definitely distance from the airport. as opposed to the other way.
All right. And so Spencer's a CFI as well. So I told him to join in on the conversation. Anybody else have a question? Lucas? Oh, never mind. Spencer left. Okay. Bye, Spencer.
I do have a question, guys. How's it going, everybody?
Hey, Lucas.
And it's more of a recent event question rather than law or whatever, but I know they extended our requirement for medical. Does anybody know if they extended the same thing right now for the biannuals?
I haven't heard anything on the 91 side.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I think it's still 24 months.
I haven't heard it either. I just got an email. I was reading it today, and I didn't see biannuals listed.
Okay.
They don't call them biannual flight reviews anymore. They just call them flight reviews.
Yeah,
Oh.
flight review, yeah.
Yeah, they want you to have it by 24 months, but they'd like to see people do it every 12. And I do a lot of private out of Vandenberg. I'll do a 12-month annual review, and if they're instrument rated, I'll go ahead and do the IPC check too for the GA don't fly really enough to stay competent at it or proficient at it. So I'll do both. I'll sign off both when I'm doing. If I'm doing IPC, I'll do the annual flight review and sign it off as well. It's just a longer ground because we cover everything in the air. But recently, I don't know why they stopped calling them biannual. They still want you to do it by the 24th month, but it's a vernacular with the FAA is strange. I don't think.
What all is included in that in the flight review that you have to do every 2 years?
Going to breakfast.
Well, it's up to it's really up to the instructor who's going to sign you off. I think it's
It's at least an hour of ground and like an hour. I do an hour of ground, an hour in the air. If I'm doing IPC combined review, I will do 2 hours on the ground and then an hour. Most of my rides are an hour and a half in the air. But I want to make sure because that's my endorsement. That's my policy. I'm going to make sure that they are proficient at everything.
Oh, okay.
Is it still if under 400 hours or something, you have to have an annual flight review? There used to be a time.
No, it's just an hour flight, an hour of the ground minimum, but it's up to the instructor, and it's also on the level of like whatever the instructor feels you're comfortable before him to sign you off, and then also like if you're giving a biannual flight review to, we'll say, a commercial pilot, or versus a private pilot, I think the instructor has to cater their instruction to their student. That's part about being an instructor. So.
Yeah.
So like, so to answer your question, Kent, like it just depends pretty much,
So
to me, I would ask my students, hey, what are you weak at? Like, are you weak at stalls? What are you weak at? And I think you can build your curriculum around that, because I had a student, she was scared of stalls. She hated doing stalls. Like, well, let's just go do stalls and let's just see what happens, stuff like that. So again, it's really, to me, like a good instructor will cater to their student.
So if you're, like I'm, let's say I finally get my private pilot next month, God willing. So in 2 years, if I don't do anything else, then I should, or a year or 2 years, according to Will, get a flight review. But if I'm working with an instructor and working on my instruments during that time period, I don't have to have that review.
I have a question to piggyback on that. Do check rides count towards your flight as a flight review?
I believe they do.
If you do a check ride, it starts the clock all over again.
Hi, Spencer.
Hey, Spencer's back. So yeah, Ken. So when I was doing mine, I didn't have a flight review for a while because I got my private, then I did my instrument check ride. Then a year went and I did my my commercial, and then a year later I did my multi-engine. So for all those times, those are all counted as flight reviews.
Okay.
Every check ride.
Check ride, yeah. And I haven't done a flight review or IPC check in forever because I have to do recurrent training, just like Ron does, and just like so that each time you do that recurrent training, it resets everything. So it's depends on how proficient, how often. Some of your G will go, they're weekend warriors. They don't put themselves in the aircraft enough to stay proficient, and that's why they have that. Some people go months without flying their plane. And they sometimes forget, if you go 90 days without flying your plane at night and during the day, what do you have to do? What are you required to do by the regulations if you're going to take some passengers with you? If you've gone more than 90 days without flying during the day and night.
Well, it's also landings, so every 30 days, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. If you're going to carry passengers, you've got to go out and do takeoffs and landings. At night, do they have to be a full stop?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So you can't go out and do your free takeoffs and landings during the day, fly somewhere for lunch, and then it gets dark and fly back with a passenger if you haven't done your free takeoffs and landings. You're going to say, hey guys, we're here in the FBO because I'm not current. Now I got to go out and do free bounces around the pattern before they can get on the plane and you got to fly back home. So keep in mind your currency, just your 90-day currency. It's always good to, if you're flying, to fly monthly, because that's your, being the PIC, you're responsible for whoever gets on that aircraft, and you don't want to scare the crap out of somebody because then they'll never fly with you again. But the night proficiency is the hardest because a lot of us, we just like flying nice, clear, beautiful blue days and don't get enough night flying in. And sometimes night flying in Florida is like flying an IMC because you can't see the horizon. You have to use your instruments just to stay, straight and level. So that's where I see a lot of the experience or proficiency lacking is a lot of general aviation guys, and they just don't do it a lot. It's something you need to keep up with.
Steve or Stacy, do you guys have any questions or anything that you want to discuss? You don't have to be a question, just something that you experienced flying the line or flying something.
No, but as Ron had said, that ASA, the mistakes that everybody else has made. I mean, it's so nice to know, because like I flew into a cloud once and I didn't mean to do it, and it was night flight, and I got so scared. But then I remembered the ASAA videos, and I'm just going like, I'm not going to be one of those idiots. And I got myself out. So, good 180, and I'm out of it. But
that's the problem, is that we are all one of those idiots, and you just have to remember from their mistakes what they did wrong and just not do that. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Night flying is the one that'll get you, especially when you're flying over the center of Florida. It's like God's country over there. There's literally not a single light. Kyle and I actually did that flying back one night, and he was flying, and we were looking, and the next thing you know, we were on a flight plan, and before we know it, we were in a cloud, and there we go. We got through it obviously, but we didn't see it coming. It was just pitch black, and next thing you know, you felt it inside the cloud. So it'll definitely come up on you, especially here at night, especially in the middle of Florida. Lucas, you fly out of Orlando.
Safety. No, go ahead.
Lucas, you're out of Orlando, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we're out of Orlando. Kissimmee, actually, south of Orlando.
Yeah. So I mean, coming even south, even through that part of that northern part of the state as well, all of a sudden all the lights are gone.
And anything between like Kissimmee and the coast, like if you go into Melbourne,
yep.
You almost have to stay over 192 to see some sort of lights. Otherwise, for miles, there's nothing.
Yep. Anybody else have any comments or questions or anything they want to discuss that they don't want to ask on Facebook forum because people will tell us we're idiots, or why do we have licenses?
So
No.
the situation.
But if it's one thing, but if you know of anybody that wants to do their IFR or PPL ground school, checkride-prep.com is doing a free ground school starting on Monday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but you got to get signed up. But it's free. It's 3 nights a week, and it's for a month.
Oh, free is good.
What
Monday,
was
Wednesday,
that
Friday.
address? What was that address again, Stacy?
I'm going to read it to you. Checkride, and then it has that -prep.com.
Prep.com. Perfect.
So I start on Monday because I've been putting off this IFR for a long time. So, I mean,
You don't have your IFR, Stacy?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I've been this is like, it's got like a couple pages ruffled and that's about it. But I just can't get focused on it. This is a 2018 edition. I mean, I bought the King School in 2015 or something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous how long I've been put this off.
I think that's the most important rating that you'll ever get in your life. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that'll definitely save your bacon. And I think it's the most challenging. Besides the flight instructor rating, I think that's probably the best rating you'll ever get. So
Yeah, I've been through the entire King School, and then I just like, the test just didn't do it for me. But I didn't take the test, but the practice tests were too hard, so I put it off.
you know what? I
it's
told
free.
Kyle this. I recommend the King School's check ride prep video. They're John and Martha King. They're really nice.
Martha.
But
oh,
they're really corny. But what's nice about the King School check ride prep, not the written test prep, but the check ride prep, is that they give a mock check ride. It starts from the oral and it goes in the airplane. So if you can literally just not memorize, I use memorize, but if you just watch, because it's given, they have an FAA examiner and they give a mock check ride to a student and they'll ask you everything under the sun. So if you can just emulate what they do in the airplane and there, I did it for my commercial through CFI. Riddle had their own curriculum, but I actually bought that also. So, that I think it's like $135. Kyle, how much was it? It was something like what, 150 or something?
About that, yeah. In regards to the written prep, I recommend Shepherd for the written.
Yeah.
Shepherd Air.
Yeah. So, Stacy, to me, it's a good, to me, it's a good investment. They like literally, you just watch them give a check ride and you learn from others. And then they have all these different cool GoPro shots, like, airplane and stuff and all that jazz. But, like the examiner will say, okay, show me a hold, give me an intersection hold, show me a VOR hold. And, they talk about everything, what you need to know.
perfect.
So I got a statement for you guys. So
I can't hear
the
you.
question that came up, can you hear me? Oh, hold on. Oh.
There you go. You're good.
All right, can you hear me now?
Oh, nice. There you go. There you are.
Yeah.
No better.
So in regards to the commercial, you have to do the 10 hours of solo night. And the DPE actually had a conference call with the FAA legal system in regards to, there's a little word in there that says or. In regards to that, the student who's doing the 10 hours of night solo either has to be solo or accompanied with a CFI as a supervised solo. That also trickles down into the long cross country too. And that just came out like 3 weeks ago. Like they are hitting hard on
So
that.
has that changed? Because again, I haven't instructed in a long time, but I remember there was one solo long for your commercial, and there was one dual day and one dual night.
Correct. But yet flight schools won't let the students do night solo because of liability reasons with insurance.
Oh, so is there a caveat under 61 with that?
Under 61, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So, but yeah, that's a big flag that came up at my flight school. Luckily for me, the DPE already looked at my stuff already, and he's like, yeah, forgot it. Don't care anymore. You got the boxes.
Let's see, for a night, solo is not required, right? Except for like you're doing your commercial. So it is night is required for commercial, but you can do it as a private pilot, fly that nighttime, right?
But they would want, it literally says, and I have it pulled up.
But I think it's for your commercial training. It has to be 10 hours after that, isn't it? For commercial pilot training, if I recall.
Oh, I got it.
One.
Which is harder, the commercial or the IFR?
IFR.
IFR for sure.
That's the most challenging one you'll ever do.
Yeah. The third grade was hard for me, then it just got easier from there.
Well, back then it was much harder because you had to write on those stone tablets.
I was the only one in third grade with the driver's license.
Did someone say a stone tablet?
Well, yeah, you had to chisel stuff on a tablet and stuff, so it was harder.
It's paper.
So it says 10 hours. I'm looking at the 61.129, and it says 10 hours a single engine or solo, or 10 hours PSC with an authorized instructor on board. And that is where they're getting everyone at now.
I see.
Or.
Yeah, so it can be either or. If you have an instructor, if you've done it solo, it worked either
Right.
way.
So where they're getting at is they're carrying that or down to the long cross country. So they just bring that
Instructor
or
in the
down.
plane.
So the FAA legal has been the DP, my DP plus other DPs in the Central Florida has been fighting with the FAA on that, and the legal came back and go no. So.
Said no to, you can't have the instructor in the plane with you?
No, he said you can't do like if you do solo night with your instructor, you can't go solo cross country by yourself. You have to have the instructor with you. So it has to like carry forward kind of thing. So if you do,
Kyle, is that the long cross country? Are you saying you did a dual, or because I'm looking at, I mean, like, we can get into the weeds on this one, but I'm looking at 61.129 part 4.
Yep.
And then subsection 1 talks about the cross country flight underneath that 10 hours of solo flight time.
Yep.
So,
and
I don't want to get into the weeds on this one with everyone here, but
yeah,
in my interpretation of this, it says that 10 hours of solo is indicative of that one long cross country. Exactly what Ron said.
I understand, but this is what's coming down from the DP.
Yeah.
So
You've got to take the FAA's legal interpretation, because that sets precedent when you do that, doesn't it? We can't take and say, well, we don't agree with you, legal.
Yeah.
Usually when the legal comes down and gives you an interpretation, that sets precedent, and you have to follow that interpretation unless it's otherwise stated or looked at or reviewed. And
well, of course, yeah, obviously, I mean, I would say I think this is kind of digging the weeds on this one, so to speak. But
yeah, splitting hairs.
Yeah, but anyway,
I'm going to break out my book, Everything Made Simple, and see what his interpretation is. Someone got that book just recently. I saw it on Facebook.
Kent got it, right?
That's
Yeah,
right. I've been looking at it.
Yep.
Everything Made Easy.
I'm looking at
Got it right here next to me.
it right here.
Running around back there.
Okay.
For commercial.
I'm looking for the Everything Made Easy.
Steve, you have any questions in the meantime?
In the meantime, look at the.
Not really.
Any-
No, it's just interesting being part of the group and listening to, what people are thinking, like going through Bravo and all that. It's just interesting how other people have had other experiences than I have.
And I think I was lucky enough to be able to, I started my training a long time ago at Lakeland, so I had some tower experience, but then training at Tampa Exec, you were working with, Bravo controllers, but I do meet pilots that have never been around a class Bravo airspace, and they'll do everything in the world to go around it, as opposed to as opposed to some of us at a Tampa Exec, or even some of the other places that are just call up and get a clearance and go straight through.
Well, what happened with me is that I only got my license about 3 years ago, and my CFI, he wanted to go over to Whittier, and he said, we're going to go through Bravo. Now, he just happened to be a 737 pilot, and he said, this is what you do. And, the tower was really nice. I mean, as long as they're not busy, they're going to be nice to you when you're talking to them. And we, transitioned through and landed at Whittier. And then we circumvented going back, and we stayed at around 1,000 feet, which you all had talked about, which is, the best way of flying around it if you're going to. But, going through it is really not big a deal unless you're intimidated. And I am a little bit as far as talking to the tower and not making an ass of myself.
I'll tell you when it does help too is with your cloud clearances when you're in Bravo. If you are getting your clear, we were flying one time through, and I forgot who I was with, and we were coming back across the east-west transition, and the cloud layer was kind of coming down, and we were probably less than, I don't know, 200 feet, below. But that's when it clicked in. We're like, oh yeah, we're in Bravo. All we need to do is stay clear of clouds. Had being outside of that space, we probably would have been in some sort of cloud clearance violation. So the clearances come into place too.
One of the things, though, is really interesting, having been, being a new pilot, is that, I think, was it Kyle, you talking about ForeFlight or something like that? Anyway, ForeFlight or any of these, GPS systems, they're just a godsend. I can't imagine having, like, go cross country 20, 30 years ago. It's, you see, a tower on the sectional. That doesn't mean you're going to see it that easily, when you're passing by it, even though you're close to it and you're going by paper rather than by the GPS. I mean, you're going to see it that easily. So all these landmarks are not necessarily a given. So you got to, have your eyes out there and making sure you're flying in the direction you should be.
Yep. I mean, so Will Smith was my private pilot instructor, and I literally had a clipboard and a sectional folded up, and he literally sent me. That's how I did my cross country out of Tampa Exec down to over to Lakeland and down to Venice. And we're literally looking out for checkpoints and
Yeah.
I had to do the whole flight plan and the thing. Oh my goodness.
That's awesome. Steve, to jump on what Juan was talking about, I think everyone kind of has those ATC jitters when they're, learning how to fly or just getting their licenses. But I think if me coming from experience, I think, let, ATC be your friend. I mean, like, they're there for you. And that's what I want to emphasize to students or everyone, is that ATC is there for you. Like, yeah, they're there to, control, but they're there to help you. So for example, if you're in a cross country and you're lost, speak up and tell them, don't be afraid. Am I going to get in trouble? Blah, blah, blah. Like, let them help you. If you're trying to navigate around weather, tell them, hey, I don't have a radar on my 172. Can you point me out where these storms are? Just so like my point is just like, let them be a service for you, because that's what they are. It's air route traffic control is what it's called. So let them be of service to you. And that's what, my two cents.
Well, I tell you, there's a few things that helped me as I was training, because I did have a fear, like somebody was talking about, making a fool of yourself whenever you're talking to them. There were three things. There was a book that a guy had put out on talking to ATC that was real helpful. Two was going on the internet and getting on atc.net and listening to Lakeland, listening to Tampa, listening to Gainesville, just to kind of hear the conversation, how it was going. Because some of the smaller airports that are on there, they get guys like me that are coming in and aren't as proficient as some of you commercial guys are, somebody that's been flying a long time. And that helped put me at ease. And then lastly, a buddy of mine that was an air traffic controller up in New York told me about the Landline, which is a Facebook page, and it's all air traffic controllers and pilots. But just seeing what they talk about and everything really humanized them to me, that they're just like me, that they have questions, they have issues. Oh, how would I handle this type of thing? Mm-hmm. To know, that makes me feel more comfortable in being able to say, hey, I didn't understand what you said. Do you mind repeating that? Or can I clarify something? And that really helped me overcome my fear of talking to them.
Absolutely. I mean, like, they're human too. So like I said, they're kind of there for us as well. So if you have a question or something, just speak up, Yeah.
Yeah, I might just add to that too. If you are talking to ATC, you need to remember that those guys aren't always pilots, or know what equipment we have in our aircraft and what pilots have to deal with. Example, and I think this was one of the AOPA Air Safety Foundation videos on YouTube. There was a pilot, he was flying on instruments and he'd lost his vacuum pump. Okay, so instrument or private, doesn't matter. If you've lost your vacuum pump, you've lost your attitude indicator, and possibly your directional gyro. if it's an older, like Cessna 172 or something. So he told ATC, I've lost my vacuum pump. ATC has no idea what a vacuum pump is. What does it do? Is it for the toilet? What do you use that thing for? They don't have a clue. So you need to be specific when you tell them, I've lost my flight instruments. I can't control the aircraft by instruments. You be specific so they can help you, because that way they can maybe take you towards VFR weather or someplace where you can safely land the aircraft. In this case, they vectored the guy towards an aircraft that was IFR, is like 500 overcast, and he couldn't get through the clouds without his instruments. So just to be aware, when you are talking to ATC, if you do have an issue, be specific on what your problem is, what your issue is. That not just some equipment failure, because they may or may not know what equipment that is.
All right. Well, we're coming up on our hour. Anybody have any last? First of all, does everybody like the question and answer better? I know a lot of you have been on all of them from the beginning. Are we better with question and answer if we do this again next week?
I enjoy the question and answer. I too like having where we kind of had a little bit of an agenda that we maybe covered the first 20 minutes or maybe 30 minutes of the call and then opened it up to questions. I did like that on the last one.
Okay.
And we can also, technology is a big thing that I keep on when I go through my continuing education CFI renewals. The big thing is about technology. So if you guys want to learn how to use the G1000, if you guys want to learn how to use the Garmin 750, the 600, all the technology that's coming out and going into these newer rental aircraft, or even using your ForeFlight with your iPad. I'm completely electronic with my flight bag. Everything that I need, every one of my planes has an app where I do the weight and balance, fuel burn, all my calculations.
I can see John Waltz is dying a little bit on the inside.
It's just getting tech savvy, and the smaller general aviation, they don't have what the airlines have. They have the Garmin, the G1000s, the 750s, the 650s, the 600s, even the old 3350.
I agree, and I'll add my 2 cents. Walt's probably heard this a million times. Sorry, dude. But I think that you need to start with the basics. I think that you start off with the paper weight and balance first, and just make sure you can do it before you hop on and start doing, ForeFlight from the beginning. You need to know exactly why it works. Call me old school, but you need to know how it works. Why am I doing weight times arm equals moment? Why am I doing it? Not just plugging and playing, but you need to understand, and a good CFI should explain, okay, the weight times the arm is this, and I'm doing this because of this. I think, I think you need to just at least have the foundation before you start playing with the tech. Believe me, I love tech, believe me, but that's just my old school.
I think all instructors are still doing the pencil and paper thing. I know, I do. I still teach it.
I mean, if for nothing, for no
NDBs and ADS.
If for no other reason than the fact that we all had to do it, so you had to do it too.
Yes, damn it.
Yeah, I'm going to add my little 2 cents here. I think we all should know how to do it and what the principles are. But I think using technology in today's world eliminates a lot of mistakes. That's like saying, today's snipers should be shooting with a musket because that's what they did 100 years ago.
That's fair, but I think that from a teaching, once you understand the basis of it, then that's fine. Believe me, all of us use tech in the real world, believe me, especially in the airline world. But I'm saying at least know why you're doing it. If one has a good grasp, then that's fine, by all means. But I think just as long as you know why you're doing it, why it's happening, then that's fine,
John, and I agree with what you say, and I always think it's better. I'm not that old school. I'm into technology and everything, but I love, prior to using the calculator, make sure you know how to do your multiplication and division and everything.
Of course, it's
longhand. Because if by chance you enter information in, because the information out's only as good as the information in, and if for some reason you didn't put something in correctly, you kind of need to know what you expect the answer to be. Exactly, E6B. And if for some reason something on ForeFlight, you're like, that doesn't make sense,
Right.
You know that for a reason. You know, you just don't rely on it.
I can agree. Like I said, as long as you understand the basis of why you're doing it, then like once you understand, then fine. It's just like for us learning how to like use a calculator. As long as you like know what you're doing, then by all means go use it. Same thing, same correlation applies to for flight. Like why am I doing a wind correction angle? Why am I doing this? And you can understand that why. That's on the back. Yeah, it's on the back. It's on the.
I just realized that this spins. I'm just Will's about to throw his drink through the screen. I didn't know that this thing will spin around and it slides up and down. It's cool.
On the back is the wind correction angle, if I recall. Again, my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, no, we always make fun of John just because John does he's not a child of the magenta line, like so to speak. So, but we'll do this again. We did state that we do about an hour.